Hi, this is Mike Hendrickson from Strata Hadoop World in San Jose. I'm here with Jack Norris, the CMO of MapR's. Jack, how you doing?
Great.
Good. So, you guys have done a lot in the last few years around this conference and the data world. So, your journey going forward, where do you see it going?
No, I think, maybe a little self-interested, but I think it's one of the most exciting spaces in IT. And what we're seeing is companies rethinking how they use data and how they organize around data. And the past was about the application and technology dictating how the data was formatted. A lot of processing and schema definition, et cetera. And because of the speed and the expanding data sources that are being used, it's really becoming the data that's at the center, and then the applications coming to that.
It's almost like data is IT now, or like this world really is becoming the IT world, because if you don't, as a company, have a data strategy or a data platform, you're really not probably going to be a company. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's there's new businesses where leveraging data is at the center of what they're doing.
Core, yeah.
And existing businesses, it's the key to competing. And it's, we've talked about being a data-driven company for quite some time, but that was usually about looking backwards and understanding the queries and reports to be able to kind of paint, well, what has happened. And what we're seeing is that the companies that are really making the significant impacts, they're blending kind of these data feeds and this production and operations with analytics and impacting business as it happens.
So you guys have been around for a while, in this data world. So your customers, what do you think the biggest benefits are? And can you talk a little bit about your ecosystem?
Sure.
And some of the changes you've seen with your customers?
So it's really across different applications. And even in a single customer, it's not one application. They might start with one, but rapidly expand its use. We've got customers, 50 different use cases, multiple departments, thousands of jobs on the platform. And there's a significant portion that are focused on revenue. How do they expand and improve their existing revenue? How do they roll out new products and services? And it's leveraging that data to make that happen. We're seeing companies that are changing their operations and getting much more efficient, lowering cost, streamlining operations because of their ability to better harness data, understand where the anomalies are for cost, et cetera. And then there's a third area, which is all about risk mitigation. And it's understanding security, fraud, and using the data to get a much better view of what's going on and a much faster response.
So, that's a word that I've heard more and more at this event this year, is security. Do you guys bake that into your platform? Is that something that comes first?
Yeah, if you, security is across many different dimensions, and one important aspect is how is the data kind of secured within the Hadoop system. So do you have encryption? Do you have encryption on the wire? What's your authentication process? Can that link into my enterprise directories? And you have to have that as kind of a baseline, and we've built that in at the lowest level pieces of the architecture, so there's no backdoor through the Linux file system and no exposure. And then on top, it's how do you mask the personal information? How do you provide auditing capabilities and understand who's done what at what time? And a lot of those are integrating with different partner solutions. So it's not just within Hadoop, but it's across the entire data center, across the entire application space.
Is there a cultural component too? Like, some of these larger enterprises want to save every piece of data they've ever generated, and that may not be secure and safe. Is there a cultural change that has to come along with, if you're really going to move to a data platform and be a data-wise company, that you have to think about your architecture and how much data you're storing and how much you're accessing?
Well, if you look at the typical enterprise, there are so many silos of information that it's a difficult problem. It's not just how am I protecting the data here? It's what went over there and what's over there and which data was moved and massaged at different levels. So simplifying, a lot of the sources, having a central trusted platform that has the full data protection and availability and security and access controls, I think is a huge step. And that's what we're about, is trying to make this utility-grade platform available so that organizations can leverage data, but leverage it responsibly and without the risk.
So is one of the first steps, though, for an organization is kind of a data inventory to know what they have before they can start to define their architecture for building their platform?
I think there are three big pillars for a big data strategy, and agility is one of them.
Yep.
And that's an interesting dichotomy, because an inventory or IT must define the metadata structure first. That's typically how we started with data warehouses and started with different analytic functions. And there's a spectrum here, and what organizations are looking at is, how do I understand data, how do I leverage, how do I explore, and do that quickly, and then have a process that gets a refined, protected, center of truth for additional reporting and information. And it's how do you ensure that journey and how do you leverage those assets most effectively is what the big data strategy is about. And some of the new sources here are things like Apache Drill that help with the ability to explore the data without requiring an IT step first. And that's been really exciting and driven a lot of interest in booth traffic.
So a couple things have come up at this event this year that, I'm hearing different themes emerge. Security is one of the top ones that I hear. Do you think 12 months from now we're going to still hear all these data breaches in the news? Or do you think we're going to get better as an industry, and as an industry that provides data solutions? Are we getting better, or are there so many more companies getting serious with data that it's going to just continue to happen?
Security is a big focus for big data, and we've got some of the leading security firms using our platform to combat exactly that. So in many cases, it's using data to understand the sophisticated attacks that are happening, understand what the exposure is, as well as understanding and automating some of the first-line response so that you can take hours of a response down to minutes. So companies like Solutionary and companies that are doing kind of the leading antivirus and other kind of security protection. So I think we're leading the charge in addressing those data breaches and helping companies get the visibility into where the attack surfaces are and how they can close the gaps there.
So let's fast forward 12 months. We're here in San Jose next year in 2016. What's going to change with MapR and with this industry that you guys will address?
So I think if you look at the journey and how the show has changed, early on it was, what is Hadoop and what are these kind of funny project names and how can I possibly use it and where do I start? And now we're getting the point where it's really questions about some of the capabilities in terms of meeting SLAs and having multiple applications and moving into real time and really impacting business as it happens. And that focus has also shifted to how is Hadoop leveraged within a broader context? How does it coexist within the data center? How do I effectively work on real time across data centers? So our multi-master replication announcement that synchronizes data across data centers for business continuity and real-time apps is a huge impact. Things like Project Myriad that allows side-by-side running of Hadoop jobs and other jobs in a very flexible, elastic environment is another really interesting project that's part of that bigger context of putting data at the center of the data center, which sounds like an oxymoron. But it's about how do you kind of drive this efficiency, how do you have a very flexible operating system for the data center, and how do you have the data services layer on top to support that?
That's an interesting comment, data center. It's been around forever, but it was anything but.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jack, thank you for your time. This has been great.
Mike, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
You.